Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome to the VAP family of podcasts.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 46 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. And if this is the first episode of this podcast that you are hearing, welcome. I want to tell you that we interview a different veteran-focused nonprofit every single week, and we've got 45 other episodes that you should totally go and listen to after this one, and we've got a lot more coming. This has been a really incredible week for me. I was down in Tampa meeting with Blaine, the executive director of Team Red, White, and Blue, and I'm helping them to launch their own podcast. It's going to be called the Eagle Nation Podcast, and it's coming out in a few weeks. And if you don't remember Team Red, White, and Blue, you can go back to episode 10, where I interviewed Blaine Smith, and he tells you all about Team Red, White, and Blue and the amazing things that they're doing in communities all across the country. And this podcast is going to be a great tool for them to reach out to their thousands and thousands of members, and also to bring in some new eagles into their nest. I love what they're doing there at Team Red, White, and Blue, and I love that they're going to have this podcast coming out. It's definitely going to be one that I'm going to be listening to. And I'll give you some more information on that when it actually launches, so you can go and check it out yourself. While I was down there, I also ran into some old friends, Aaron and Vu from The Mission Continues, who just happened to be in the area meeting with Blaine. And so we all got to hang out for a little bit and talk about what the different organizations were doing and some great things that they have going down in Tampa. And then I also had a chance to meet up with Major Mack from the Veteran Arts Center Tampa Bay, which was another guest on this podcast. So I met up with 3 different guests from the podcast just out of coincidence. And so it was a really great week. And now I'm back home. I got some sun. I'm a little energized and I'm ready to get back into it. So let me tell you about this week's guest. This week we have Shawna Barnes from Healing Arts of Maine. Artists enter into the art world in various and sometimes unique ways. Ceramic artist Shawna Barnes falls into the latter category. While she's always enjoyed various forms of artistic expression, drawing, painting, polymer clay modeling, and others, it wasn't until becoming disabled in 2011 that she was able to achieve a long-desired dream and attend her first pottery class. That class turned out to be both a beginning and an end. It was the beginning of her journey into a form of expression that fulfilled her like no other, that allowed her to speak out against and speak for causes that she's passionate about, that put forth and presented her ideals while providing emotional and physical relief from her injuries past. It would also be the beginning of the end of her search for how to release the anger and annoyance, as well as the love and passion she feels for the world around her. While it cannot be said that ceramics saved her, it did reinvigorate her in immeasurable ways. All right, let's jump right into the interview with Shawna. Shawna, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hopefully we can get through this interview without any kind of interference or the phone call dropping or anything, since both of us seem to have some weather going on.
Let's hope.
Okay, Shawna, let's start out with just a brief description of what Healing Arts of Maine is.
Okay, well, right now it is very much in the idea phase. It is destined to become an art center where both art therapy classes taught by certified instructors, as well as art as therapy classes, are going to be offered for not only veterans, but a big underserved population that includes kids with developmental disabilities, adults, senior citizens. I found when I was doing my research that there's a lot of services lacking for not only the veteran demographic in Maine, but also some of those others that I mentioned.
Gotcha. And we're going to get into that a lot more, but first I kind of wanted to get a little bit of information about you, a little bit of your background. So let's start off, were you in the military?
I was. I did just shy of 4 years in the Army as a combat medic. I deployed to Iraq in 2009. In, I want to say April of 2010, I started having seizures. So they sent me home early from Iraq, and I was medically retired out. And then effective July of 2011. And then I found ceramics, which is my healing art modality of choice, in October. And that's kind of what gave me the idea to start healing arts. I've been married for 2.5 years. I have a 13-year-old son and have a service dog and a kitty cat.
Interesting. For the service dog, did you go through an organization for that?
I did not. Well, kind of. So a friend of mine who is a trainer also worked at a rescue organization for German Shepherds in Virginia. And she came across Kane when he was about 6 months old, and he was in the rescue, and felt that he had the perfect kind of demeanor and personality to be the kind of service dog I needed, which is seizure alert and response, and he also helps me with some mobility tasks. So she matched us up when he was 6 months, and she's been helping me with ongoing training virtually through Skype and phone calls and Facebook and all of that good stuff. And I got him July 3rd of 2011.
Oh, wow. The reason why I asked is I was just interviewing another organization that helps to train service dogs, and specifically they grab rescues and then they train them.
Yeah, no, this is strictly, it was, I want to say coincidence, because I found her looking for somebody to help me acquire a service dog, and we just struck up a friendship, and she's helped me a lot with Kane over the last 5 years.
Oh, that's excellent.
She has a service dog herself. She's hard of hearing, and she has RSD and some other health issues. So she really knows how to pick them and training, and knows what to look for as far as the demeanor and the personality that you need depending on the services the dog needs to provide.
Gotcha. So were you artistic when you were growing up?
I dabbled a little bit in just about everything. I did the sculpting in the Sculpey clay, and I drew a little bit, and I can't draw from memory or imagination so much as look at a drawing and copy it and blow it up about 3 times. I've always written. I enjoyed writing poetry for a long time. And then I took a couple of ceramics classes in college before I enlisted and really loved it. And then just throwing pottery on the pottery wheel was something I'd always wanted to do. And my husband and I had just started dating, and he encouraged me to, pursue it if that was something I really wanted to do, because there was a studio about 15 minutes down the road, and I tried it and fell in love. Interesting.
So when you mentioned your husband, I thought you were going to say that he does sculpting also, and you guys act out the whole ghost scene.
No. He tried about a year after I got into pottery. He decided he was going to sit down and make himself a couple of cups. And, no lessons, no nothing. He's like, if I can make a cup, then I'll let you keep teaching me. Well, he didn't let me teach him anything at all, except, okay, you put the clay here and you put the pedal down. Needless to say, he had 3 blobs of clay and he couldn't make a cup, so he hasn't touched clay since.
Now, that's one of the things that I haven't really messed with, but I wonder if I would be good at it. It intrigues me.
Well, it's very centering, because you have to focus on that, and if you're not focused on what you're doing, it gets wonky real fast, especially when you're learning to throw on the wheel. So it's very meditative.
Oh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm painting, I kind of feel that way where at first I'm kind of scattered, where my brain is going everywhere. And as soon as I kind of start to get focused, everything around me kind of falls away.
Right.
And I'm completely at one with whatever it is I'm working on.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I found with clay. Especially, I can't throw as much anymore because I've got some leg issues. So most of my stuff I do personally is all hand-built and sculpting. But when I started, I learned to throw on the wheel, and that was one of the things that hooked me. Is you sit down to the wheel, you have the blob of clay in front of you, and you have to center it on the wheel, and then just the motions that you are required to use throughout the process. If you're not completely paying attention to what you're doing, it's really easy just to get the cylinder to flop over or the bowl to collapse, you really have to be focused, and it's very meditative in that respect.
Interesting. And I was doing some digging through not only through the website, but also in the VAP community. And I came across, I can't remember where I saw this, but might have been a post, but it was something about your father also being in the military.
So I come from a long line of military. Both my parents were in. That's actually how they met.
Okay.
They're both Army Intel.
Nice.
Back in the days when we still used Morse code, so they were called diddy boppers.
Huh.
And then my grandfather on my mom's side was in the Army Air Corps before it split off, and my great-grandfather was in, and my uncle, and I've got a cousin who's currently in, who's also a combat medic.
Wow.
So it's definitely in the blood.
So you pretty much knew you were going in the military from an early age.
Oh yeah. Well, and even in high school, I was in Civil Air Patrol because that kind of like a junior ROTC for the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
And I loved it. I ate that up.
But you decided to go to Army instead of Air Force when you actually went in, huh?
Yep.
So let's talk about the healing arts of Maine. Where did that idea come from?
It came about a year after I'd been doing pottery and was getting really interested in my sculpting. And I realized how much just the act of creating had helped me. And I wanted to be able to provide a safe place for people to get that same kind of healing benefit without having to take a handful of pills. And in my connections and networking with other people, there are a lot of veteran artists that I've, come to befriend. And, they all say the same thing, is that once they got out for whatever reason, whether it was medical or they just retired or, only did their 2 to 4 years and then that was enough for them, when they turned to the art, it just had a way of making everything make sense, or it gave them a voice to deal with psychological issues that they were having a hard time processing or couldn't verbalize. And that, I don't know, I'm a giver and a healer by nature, so just being able to share that with other people was really, the big motivating factor and the drive for me.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot of people getting out of the military, they just, you love serving. That's what you're made to do. And when you get out, it makes sense to either go into an organization and try to help that organization or to create one on your own.
Yeah, and I realized through a lot of my research, Maine, we've got 14 counties. And regardless of which county you go in, whether it's Portland, Maine, where there's definitely a higher population, or all the way up to Aroostook County, where you're driving 2 hours between just to get to a Walmart, the population is about 10% veterans all across the board. So the total of Maine's population evens out to be about 10 to 11% of the entire state population as vets. And, even a small portion of that chooses to utilize the VA system. But there's still a need that needs to be met because they're still struggling and they don't know how to cope and trying to find, something just to make it worthwhile to get out of bed every day.
Yeah, my brother was actually stationed up in Maine in the Air Force when he first went in. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I drove a car up to him at one point, and I remember it was not a fun ride. This car was, I think it was like a Cutlass or something, so it was kind of rear wheel drive, a lot of power, and I got to Maine, and it was just a sheet of ice. And then when we got to the little town where he was, I thought I was in the wrong place, or I don't know, maybe in a movie or something, because there stopped being cars. We didn't see any cars for miles and miles. There was only snowmobiles, and they were in the gas stations, they were in the restaurants. And
that sounds like it might have been the old air base up in Limestone. It's since closed down.
Okay.
But yeah, that's up in the middle of nowhere. Good 8 hours from once you cross into Maine.
Yeah, that was fun. That was so fun. He had some good assignments throughout his career. He also ended up in North Dakota.
Oh, I've got family out there.
Yeah, he got some good ones. So let me ask you about this. You say that art is helping with healing these people, but I'm curious, is it pretty much helping to get their mind off of it only while they're doing it, or does that transfer for like the rest of the day, even when they're not working on the art?
I think it can be both. As an example, I have a friend of mine whose son is autistic and nonverbal, and trying to figure out a way for them to communicate and, kind of help him deal with just day-to-day stuff, especially being nonverbal. Nobody knows what you want. You can't tell them what you want. Well, and then he started painting. And the joy on his face when he started painting was, palpable. You could see it, you could feel it. And then not only during the activity, but after the activity, the outburst lessened considerably, and, less fits. And you could almost tell what he was trying to explain or verbalize by the colors he chose. If he was angry, he always picked red.
Huh.
And if he was, sad or melancholy, he chose yellow for that. Most of us would probably pick blue or, something along those lines, but yellow was his color.
Interesting.
So, I think it definitely translates to anybody, well, to a lot of people that I know that use art, because it gives them a voice where they think they didn't have a voice before, whether it's one they share with the public or one they keep for themselves. Creating the art and getting it out is therapeutic in and of itself, but then knowing that you have that release kind of makes the rest of the day better, even if it started as a shit day to begin with.
Right. And at your organization, it's not just ceramics, it's not just painting. You guys do a little bit of everything. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. We plan on doing a little bit of everything. I've got art journaling classes, the syllabus lined up. I've got hand building classes and wheel throwing classes and painting and drawing and mosaic and collage and fused glass. And if we can get the facilities, I want to bring in a wood turner or a wood carver. Because in music is another big one. Just anything and everything to kind of get people creating and help them find that one thing that speaks to them. Because, for me, it's ceramics and sculpting. For you, it's painting. For another friend of mine, it's photography. For another friend, it's watercolor. For another one, she's actually a music therapist out in Pennsylvania. So, that's the dream.
Excellent. And is this going to be strictly for people that are in need of healing, or are we talking about any veterans, family members? Who's this going to be targeting, really?
The main target, and who I eventually want to be able to offer scholarships for if they can't afford the classes, are going to be for veterans and their family members, as well as the developmentally disabled, both adults and children. But anybody's welcome. Anybody that just wants to come in for an art class, or somebody that might need, the actual art therapy designation where it's led by certified therapists. I'm not going to segregate, because art is all inclusive.
Right.
While certain things are going to be geared for a specific populace, that doesn't mean that not everybody can benefit in some way, shape, or form.
Gotcha. I was looking at your website. I saw something about an empty plates dinner. What do you have going on there?
Well, that again's in the planning stage. We just bought a house in Knox, so a lot of this stuff can finally actually come to fruition. But what the empty plate supper is I've got several local ceramic artists who have offered to make ceramic plates and donate them, and then people would buy tickets to come to the event. And at the end of the event, would be a big old dinner with entertainment and maybe some, an art class or something to engage people that come, but they get to take home that plate. So the plate's donated, you're paying for the meal, but then anything above and beyond will go towards it, making Healing Arts of Maine an actual facility instead of just, these classes that we really want to offer.
Excellent. And when is that planned for?
Well, tentatively it was supposed to be the summer of this year, but since we just moved, I'm thinking I need to revamp my timeline a little bit.
Gotcha.
Buying the house when we did has kind of thrown everything for a whirlwind.
And the idea here is that for this new facility that you're going to be creating, that's going to be a very big facility. Is that correct? Or it's going to be big enough to cover all of the different arts that you have going on?
If I could find an old elementary school and buy it and repurpose it, I mean, that kind of a facility would be ideal.
Ooh,
I mean, I've got, oh yeah, there was one that came up for sale in Franklin, which, is about 45 minutes away, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'd have had it in my budget, we'd have bought it. They were only asking $140,000 for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, somebody obviously has already snagged that at that crazy deal. But there's actually, the more I've been looking, there are some organizations that are already established where we can actually start offering these classes. One of them is Waterfall Arts right in Belfast. That's only 15 minutes from us. And I'm going to be going in and speaking to the director to see what the cost would be to start renting out rooms and beginning to offer some of these classes and gain steam that way. I've also been working on the BrainCert platform where you can offer online classes, and a fellow veteran artist, James Lagasse, does some amazing watercolor work, but he put together a basic watercolor lesson for me that I can offer online. So getting that format set up, and I'm getting some hand building classes set up that can be offered virtually as well. So because establishing this physical location has kind of had some bumps in the road, I started thinking outside the box, which I'm really good at, and figured, well, why can't we stream some of these? So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So that would open it up to people outside of Maine.
Yes, sir. That's the idea.
That would be outstanding.
So if anybody out there is an artist and you want to help, hit me up.
Well, I think we have, 600 or so in the VAP community.
That would be excellent.
Let's see here. So for this new facility, I did see that you already had some drawings and renderings up on the website of what it could be.
Yeah, I was trying to do something as cost-effective as possible while reusing a lot of stuff that we have available in Maine and lessening the kind of environmental impact. So the couple of renderings that I have up on the website are actually using old shipping containers and refabricating them to, kind of what we need for the individual studio spaces.
Interesting.
So, and I mean, I've got one that's kind of like a flower or spiral shape with garden spaces in between each little alcove, and then another one where you just put a couple of the shipping containers together and make it, just like a traditional block style facility, which that one might be more realistic because it's easier to add on as we're able to offer, more of these classes.
Right. It's completely scalable.
Exactly. And as long as I've got a hallway connecting everything, we're good to go.
Yeah, you just grab a welder. You're all set.
My husband's uncle is a welder. I've already put a little bug in his ear.
Very nice. Very nice. And did you do up the drawings yourself?
I did.
What did you use that for?
That's a really good question. I don't remember.
Yeah, it looks really cool. The 3D renderings.
Well, thank you.
I was eyeing it up and thinking, ooh, I could use something like this.
If I can find it, I will send it to you. Because
Awesome.
I don't remember which program I used. I know I used it on my tablet. So it's an app. I just don't remember which app it was.
I'm always happy to teach myself a new piece of software.
Absolutely. I do that on a regular.
Yeah. Us creative types.
Oh, yeah. Got to figure out a way. Don't know how to do something? Well, I'll figure it out.
So before we get into the final three questions, I kind of wanted just to see, first off, I know that you're just getting started, but do you have any success stories that you want to speak of for people that have used art for healing?
Oh, I've got tons of them, but we don't have enough time for that.
How about one good one?
Well, I'll use myself as an example, if that's okay.
Perfect.
I had a friend of mine, a battle buddy, commit suicide back in August.
Oh.
And I took it really hard because we used to be pretty close, especially when deployed. We helped each other through quite a lot of crap. But through my grieving process, that led me to create a series of 5 wall tiles that I'm entitling the 22 series. And at first, this creation was just going to be this single tile for me to kind of deal with, grief in my own way without having to pop a handful of pills. But once I got the first one done, I kept having idea after idea after idea, and that led to 5, and I've got at least 10 more different variations of the same theme kind of sketched out already. And now it's something I can talk about it. It doesn't, I don't cry anymore. It's, this is a serious issue. And my art is helping me tell the story to people who may not be aware or who don't think that, the 22 a day stat is legit. And it's helping to bring awareness. It's helped me to move on. And, it's helping me actually gain some exposure because these 5 tiles are going to be on display in an art show coming up in the next 2 months.
Oh, wow. That's great. I love hearing those success stories. That's one of the things that I haven't got into every episode, but I try to get that in every episode just because I like the stories behind them.
Right. Absolutely.
Also, one of the things I was curious about, since you're inside the Veteran Artist Program community, I was curious what your opinion of it was.
I love it.
Yeah?
So connecting with other people who are like-minded, that you don't have to explain some of the art because, some of the art that a lot of us make is kind of dark and dreary because it's helping us cope with whatever we're going through.
Right.
But then at the same time, a lot of it is upbeat and different, and it's allowed us to find another outlet that we're all passionate about. And I think that is one of the great things is we can relate on more than just, okay, we're all veterans, but we also are passionate about art, which my husband loves because he doesn't have to hear me talk about art all the time because I've networked with people who enjoy talking about it as much as I do.
That's great. That's great. Yeah,
he loves it.
When we were putting together the VAP community, that was one of the things where we had an idea of where we wanted it to go, but we weren't sure what it was going to be like once people got in there and what the interactions would be. We didn't know if there was going to be, drama. We didn't know if people would not want to share their stuff for fear that somebody would, take their ideas or something. But it seems like the best part, like the best case scenario for anything that could happen all came together inside the community, and it's been fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. I'm loving seeing everybody else's work, and not just, the veteran artists, but there's a lot of people in there who are supporters. And that's one thing that I really love because I think I posted a picture of one of my sculptures about a month back when I first joined, and I got some feedback from people who weren't in the military but supported, the veteran artist movement that's, kind of gaining steam, and they were seeing the message that I was trying to put forth, which was great. And they were also seeing things that I didn't see when I was creating the piece. So having that kind of a feedback was great.
Yeah. And that brings up a great point. I was talking to a guy just, 2 days ago, and he reached out to me and he wanted to connect with some veteran artists. He himself was not a veteran, but he writes stories. He writes veteran stories, and he had written a book already about, I think, World War II veterans. But he was curious if there was any veterans that he could talk to, and I was trying to convince him to come into the group, and he was like, "That's great. That's very kind of you, but I'm not a veteran. I'm not so I don't feel like I really belong in there." And I convinced him to come inside the group, and so he came in the group and he posted, and he had a slew of comments on his post that were all positive within 5 minutes of posting it. And I could see him kind of, realizing that he did belong there, that,
Yep.
That this is a place for not just veterans, but for supporters as well. And that's one thing that we're trying to do is break down the barriers between veterans and civilians. And
absolutely
segregating it off and saying, no, this is only for veterans, I don't think that that's going to help.
No. And my husband and I were actually having this discussion probably about a week or two ago, because and I don't know if it's because it's an election year or what the deal is, but 2 years ago, you were hard pressed to find any veteran art specific art shows. Mm-hmm. Right. We're veteran artists only. And now this year, I'm seeing all kinds of them, but I don't know if maybe this is my own hang up or if it's shared with anybody else, but while I'm really, really happy that there are these venues and we're given the opportunity to promote our art and, the veteran art movement and all that good stuff, at the same time, it's creating that segregation between veteran artists and civilian artists, which, we've been trying so hard to break down that wall.
Right.
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. And it is.
I'm really, really thankful for the opportunity. And, that's actually one of these themed shows is where those tiles are going to be on display. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know if that's helping bridge that gap between us or not.
Right.
I don't know. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
No, you're exactly right with what you're saying. It's kind of a right on, walking a tightrope between, do I want to, go into this with all other veterans where it's going to be just veterans who, they're going to understand the art a lot better, that, when it's personal to you because of, your situation being over in the desert or something like that. People that have experienced that will understand what you're saying a lot better. But at the same time, a civilian seeing that might not have that experience to pull from, but they're going to better understand you as a person.
Right. Seeing I don't know. I want, personally, as an artist, I want my work to be recognized because I'm a successful professional artist, not just because I have that veteran title in front of my name.
Exactly.
That's really good as a veteran artist. Well, yeah, but it's really good as, the plain old artist too.
That's right. You're an artist who happens to be a veteran.
Exactly.
Well, Shawna, is there anything that I haven't covered about Healing Arts of Maine before we get into the final three?
Just that it's going to be spectacular, and I know it's going to be a success because I'm too stubborn for it not to be.
Excellent. How can people help the organization?
Right now, the biggest one is awareness, and also some fundraising. I've done some mildly successful fundraisers in the past with moving that unfortunately has taken a back burner, but now that we're getting settled, that's going to be starting full force again. Because as with any nonprofit organization, the biggest thing is funding and being able to secure a location and get the business established, and knowing that there's an interest out there, I think is going to be the biggest key in getting the word out. So once these online classes are live, getting those out there, and for people just to acknowledge that, yes, art can do amazing things.
Excellent. All right, I think we are ready for the final three.
Okay.
All right, question number 1. Who would you like to hear on a future episode of the Veteran Resource Podcast?
I think one, if you haven't interviewed him yet, is David Keefe. He is one of the founders for Combat Paper New Jersey. And he's also, I can't remember his new title at the college. But I attended one of their workshops last May, and it was phenomenal. Drew Cameron is another one. He is the founder of Combat Paper out in California, and he's another great guy.
Drew was actually on one of the first episodes. That might have been episode 3 or 4, but I haven't talked to David yet.
Yeah, he's a good guy there. Like I said, he's the one for the New Jersey branch.
Excellent. Okay, question number 2. What upcoming project has you fired up right now?
Hopefully landing a partnership with one of these facilities in Belfast so I can start offering classes.
Excellent.
Physical, people come in, hi, how you doing? And we make art together.
That would be great. That would be a great transition to eventually into a new facility if you've already got the following that's partaking in the classes.
Absolutely.
Excellent. The third question, which you may be able to have this figured out by now, but this is the brain stretcher. If you woke up tomorrow and you found out that somebody made an anonymous donation of $10 million to your organization, what would you do with it?
Well, there's a 2.5-acre plot adjacent to the 40 acres we just bought. That would become Healing Arts of Maine property. The building itself would be established, as well as probably $1 million trust would go right in off the bat. So that way we had scholarships available as soon as the doors opened for people to come take the art classes.
Very nice. That would be great.
It would be.
So for that person out there that has the $10 million, you're looking for a place to put it.
Absolutely.
I mean, Shawna just told you how that money could be used in a good way, in a great way.
I can provide an itemized budget in 24 hours.
There you go. So for that person or for anybody else that wants to donate maybe a little bit of a smaller amount, what is the best way to get in contact with you?
Well, we're actually a nonprofit organization under the Fractured Atlas umbrella. So if you go to the website, healingartsofmaine.com, at the bottom of every page is a link to Fractured Atlas, and that takes you right to our Fractured Atlas project page, which any donation is tax deductible, which includes monetary as well as items. So if you've got some shipping containers that are taking up space in your yard, send me the invoice and I send it to them, and you can get your tax write-off letter right from them.
Outstanding.
Yes, sir.
Shawna, it has been great talking with you. I talk with you over Facebook in the group here and there, but I haven't got to talk to you in person yet, or as close to in person as we can. This has been really great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I'm hoping that in the future I can start getting back to some of the people that have been on and find out, where they are. Like, let's say I interviewed you again in a year. You might have a completely different story about your organization and how it's grown. So I'm hoping that we can make that happen.
You betcha. And I'm hoping that in a year's time, I'll be inviting you up to do a site interview because we're breaking ground on the new facility.
That would be awesome.
A girl can dream.
Let's try to make that, when it's a little bit warmer.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll do how about May? That way it's not too hot and it's not too cold. Be about 60 degrees.
Perfect. I hear you guys have summer on a Tuesday this year.
Yeah, if at all. It'll just be a prolonged spring.
All right. Thank you so much, Shawna. You have a great one.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 46. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I invite you to go over to the show notes page at veteranpodcast.com/046, and you can get to the show notes there, and you can find all of the links to get over to Shawna and over to the Healing Arts of Maine and get more plugged into that organization. You can also find Shawna in the VAP community, and if you're not in the community yet, you can get there by going to veteranartistprogram.org/community. That's all we have for this week's episode. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you in episode 47.